Titanic behind the scenes. So a lot of you requested this iceberg scene here, so let me show you how they filmed a little bit of it. So they started off by filming all the live action shots behind a green screen. They also dumped some ice down a chute onto the set. They then filmed a miniature iceberg using the same camera movements from that original shot. And afterward, they added some CGI elements of ice breaking off. I know it looks a little fake now, but it was pretty good for 1997. And they combined everything to give us this final shot here. And they use the same technique in other shots as well, combining live action with CGI. This shot shows the iceberg moving past the side of the Titanic. They're adding in the CGI elements, the ice, the waves, and they combine that with the live action shots of Leo and Kate looking over the rail. Another cool shot they did was this one here when the water is pouring into the hull. And to do that, they built a miniature model, they put it outside, they got a tank and attached a hose to it and basically just blasted the water through. They set up a high-speed camera to capture it all, which gives us our very convincing final shot we know today. Titanic behind the scenes. So how do they film people sliding down the ship? Well, there were two separate sections of the set, and the forward section only tilted up 6 degrees. So to give the impression that people were sliding down quickly, they attached these ball bearings to the bottom of the stunt double's life jackets. They would then pull them with a wire, and the extras could rotate and flail and make it seem as if they're falling from a much steeper angle. Now, the stern section of the set could actually rotate up to 90 degrees, which made it a lot more dangerous. Everybody involved was a highly trained professional, and they would rehearse their movements before actually filming a take. The crew then set up human-shaped foam dummies for extra protection. Everybody was wearing protective gear, and a lot of the structures you see are actually made out of rubber or coated in foam. So when you see the passengers smash into these metal objects, it's actually just really soft and padded. And many of the extras were attached to wires for extra safety. And putting it all together, you get the final footage you know today. Titanic behind the scenes. So how do they film all the frozen bodies at the end of the movie? So unlike these close-up action shots, which were filmed in a heated tank, all of the frozen body scenes were shot much later and filmed in the outdoor tank, which was not heated. So to keep the extras comfortable, they had warm water hoses available to them. They also had hot tubs where they can go and warm up, and they could only film for a few hours at a time. Now, to give that frozen look, they did their hair up with wax. They also attached these crystals of gelatin right on their faces. And this makeup was pretty cool because whenever it got wet, they would spray some water on it and then it would expand and it would give that frosty, frozen look. They also used contact lenses for a few of the extras so they could film with their eyes open. And once the dead makeup was applied, everyone would go outside to the 4-foot tank and play dead. And then they brought in the lifeboat and the officers and filmed multiple takes until you get the final product, which is this pretty eerie shot. Titanic behind the scenes. Okay, let's talk about the boiler room scenes. So the real Titanic had 29 different boilers located in 6 separate boiler rooms. In order to save money, the movie crew didn't build the entire boiler room. What they did was they only built 2.5 boilers and they attached a mirror at the end of the room. So this way when they filmed, they could make it seem as if there was an unending row of boilers and the room stretched on forever. The set was then decorated with coal and real flames, and they had the actors shovel that coal into those flames to really sell that inferno feeling in the boiler rooms. But in every long shot of the boiler rooms, if you pay close enough attention, you'll see the mirror at the end of the room. But at the end of the day, that fun little bit of movie magic seemed to work because the final shots that we know today really sell what it was truly like to be in those boiler rooms. Titanic behind the scenes. Let me show you a little bit of simple movie magic you were probably unaware of. So I'm sure you remember this scene with Mr. Andrews at the end of the movie when the ship is about to sink. Now, this takes place in the men's smoking room, and this set was built for the movie to be used earlier on in the movie. Here we see Cal with Lovejoy. So it was built in the sound stage. It was level, it couldn't tilt. So later on during the sinking, they had to get a little bit creative. So what they did was they tilted the camera and they had Victor Garber, the actor, lean forward. Then they added glass props with gelatin to make it seem like the liquid was angled properly. Here we see Kate and Leo touching and sniffing it. And then they had crew members yank the glasses with a little string to make it seem like it was slipping off of the edge. And when you put all those components together, the tilted camera, the leaning actor, the glasses of gelatin, and the little strings pulling the glasses off, you get a pretty realistic shot of the men's smoking room in its final moments. Titanic behind the scenes. So I'm often asked whether the scene at the beginning of the movie with the wreck was real footage or whether it was a model. And the answer is it was a bit of both. So, in 1995, James Cameron and his crew dove to the actual wreck of the Titanic to get some real footage. He brought a model of the wreck of the Titanic aboard their research ship so they could properly plan out all of the shots, the angles, before actually diving. Then they hopped into 2 deep-sea submersibles, dove more than 2 miles down to the wreck, and got all of the incredible footage they needed. Here we see the practice shots compared to the real shots of the wreck. Then, later on in the process, when they were back on land, they filmed some more detailed shots using the model of the wreck. And they did this because some shots were just impossible to film in the open ocean. But here you can see some of the shots side by side, the real footage versus the miniatures. They actually did a really good job. And they achieved this by using smoke and adding special filters to the lenses. They set up all the equipment on the floor and flipped the model upside down to get the lighting just right. Titanic behind the scenes. So how do they film this rescue sequence? Okay, so this awesome shot at the end was entirely based off of a painting by Ken Marshall, which can be found in Titanic and Illustrated History. This is my book right here. And you can see that while they were filming, they used that as a reference. Fun fact, this rescue sequence here was the only time they ever went out into the open water during the filming of the 1912 footage. And one of the things they quickly realized was how hard it was to keep all of the lifeboats together in the open water. The crew kept having to bring the boats together to reset the shot and film multiple takes. Later, the cast and crew would say that being out in the open water, they truly got a sense as to what it must have felt like to have been an actual Titanic survivor, just bobbing out there in the water. Afterward, they added in the Carpathia and some icebergs in the background until the final shot looked almost identical to Ken Marshall's painting. Titanic behind the scenes. So a lot of you guys have been asking me how they film those people jumping off the ship, and especially that one guy who smashes into the propeller right here. And it was basically a combination of real actors plus CGI, or computer graphics, which was pretty groundbreaking in the late 90s. What they did is they attached sensors to the stunt doubles and had them act out a bunch of different scenarios. They had them falling or hanging from railings or swinging. Then from that, they would generate a computer animation. So basically all of the falls started off with real actors, and then they eventually transitioned into the computer graphics. So the actors would jump off the real set into a green screen, and then the shot would continue seamlessly with the CGI actor. And that's how they were able to film these impossibly long falls. So don't worry, no guy was harmed during the propeller scene because he was just a computer animation. Titanic behind the scenes. So how do they film this engine room sequence? So the real Titanic had 2 massive reciprocating engines, just like that, and then a smaller one for the middle propeller. So the movie crew didn't want to recreate the entire thing, so they got a little bit creative. The crew used an old World War II ship that had the same triple expansion reciprocating engines, only that they were 1/3 the size of Titanic's. So they attached a bunch of miniature light bulbs and installed catwalks to make it seem like it was a life-size replica. They then filmed all these shots in a faster film rate to be able to slow it down later. Then in their sound stages, they built sets separately and then filmed their actors against a green screen. Once they got all the necessary shots, in post-production, they started compiling all of these different elements, the real actors with the miniature footage. And when it was all done, it came out quite seamless, and we get this final shot we all know today. Titanic movie behind the scenes. How did they film the boiler room flooding? So the Titanic movie crew recreated the boiler room in a separate set, and they made it look incredibly realistic. It looked amazing. The only problem was there was no way for the water to be relieved when they filmed the flooding sequence. There was no mechanism for the water to be easily drained, so they had to film all the shots in sequence. This meant that with every take they did, the water level in the room kept on rising and rising. So they really only had a limited number of opportunities to get the shots correct before the water got too deep. You can even see in this footage the water level goes higher and higher. It's now at their waistline. Here they're filming the stokers going through the watertight doors before they closed. They would also have to occasionally wipe the camera lenses down as well, but luckily after only a few takes they finally got all the shots they needed in order to give us the final scene that we all know today. Titanic behind the scenes. So how do they film the ship going down? So the stern section of the ship was built separately so it could tilt up to 90 degrees and you'd be able to place real actors on top of it. So Kate and Leo went up to the very top of the set. They were strapped in for safety reasons, and then they filmed against a green screen at the bottom. And the idea was to film as much as possible with the real actors and then afterwards add in the visual effects to complete the shot. All the stunt people were attached to wires so they could fall freely and crash into each other and make it look realistic. They then sunk a quarter-scale model of the stern and filmed it with a high-speed camera to get this shot of the water coming up. And then they composited the shot with various elements, including Kate and Leo against a green screen, and then some visual effects to show the people going into the water. And as an added touch, they also filmed Kate and Leo in a tank against a green screen. And then they took a shot of the stern sinking, you can see it there in the top left corner, and they decided to add that in the background as Jack and Rose were flailing in the water.